Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast.
This is Hannah from Hall Beer Specialists in the Great Western Arcade in Birmingham, and we're the proud sponsors of Daftaboutcraft.
Welcome to episode number 37 of Daftaboutcraft, the craft beer podcast, our penultimate episode of 2022. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for taking the time to stream or download us. I'm Dave D.
And I'm Dave B.
And we will be guiding you through all things beer for the next hour or so. Eventually. Sorry we're a week late.
Would you like to tell everyone why we're a week late?
Barley wine and computer equipment is not a good mix. It's a very bad mix, isn't it, actually? What happens is your machine sort of fizzes, then switches off, and you think, oh no, I've lost loads of audio and we have to record everything again.
Yes, and it's also probably just worth saying as well, our sincere apologies to Torside, who we will get on hopefully in the future, but were scheduled to be on this episode, and unfortunately were victims of the barley wine laptop incident, so we lost all their audio, and unfortunately Chris is very, very busy, as all small brewers are. But that said, we have managed to find someone to help us out. So again, apologies to Torside, but who have we got in their stead, Dave?
We have got Bang the Elephant, also from the East Midlands, from Nottingham. We got Nigel coming on for a chat. Now, Bang the Elephant, quite synonymous with really weird and wacky beers, and so we're going to really enjoy talking to Nigel, see what's coming up for Bang the Elephant. Hopefully lots of good stuff in the new year. There's no hype or tripe this time, is there? Something a little bit different, because Christmas is approaching.
Yes, every man and his dog and his wife does an advent calendar now. You can get one for the 12 days of Christmas or 12 days of Beermas. They are very synonymous now with craft beer and Christmas, but we thought rather than do that, we would try and actually pair a beer more, or a style of beer more, with what actually happens over the festive period. So it'll all become clear, but it's really just talking you through the 12 days of Christmas and what lovely beers you can sort of try and find and enjoy.
Yeah, we'll be pinpointing some specific beers and some general styles of beers to have on each of the 12 days, starting from Christmas Eve right through until the new year. And yeah, it should be real good fun, that should. We've also got Tried and Tested, which is a little bit different. We're looking at our favourite beer from Northern Monk's Dark and Wild Festival, because we both met up there recently. But in our usual style, let's kick off with Brew to Me, where we grab hold of a beer from a brewery we haven't sampled before.
This time I am drinking, and I'm very pleased that I got 2 cans of this, because otherwise I'd have been slightly stuck.
You're going to keep rubbing this in, aren't you?
Yeah.
And why not?
I spoke to Ben at True Story Brewing. Through the usual way, they popped up on the internet. I wasn't aware of who they were, so I got in touch, and they were very keen to feature, very happy to do so, so placed an order with them. I would be wearing the T-shirt to match the beer, but it's a bit cold now. Yeah, I can't quite just go T-shirt, so I have got a T-shirt to match this beer. I did also get, as well as the beers, some free glassware, which I'm very grateful for. The T-shirt I did pay for, I hasten to add.
You are becoming the merch king of the craft beer world, Dave.
Yeah, I do like my merch. I unashamedly do like my merch. But the beer I have from True Story Brewing Co., and they are based near Bath in Westbury, and I have got City Boys, which is an American pale ale, and the can art we thought was very reminiscent of Playbrew. There's that sort of element to it, isn't there?
Yeah, it is. That font's quite... You see it on a lot of American cans as well, that sort of style of font.
And City Boys is a 4% American pale ale.
True Story, then. How long have they been going for? Because they've not come on my radar at all.
There's not an awful lot of information available on their website.
We need to get them to come on the podcast and tell us all about them.
Absolutely, and I think they absolutely would. As I say, Ben, who I talked to on email, seemed very keen to help out and to feature. So hopefully, come the new year, you'll be hearing a bit more about them. Their website is essentially just an online store almost. They proudly purvey themselves as a nano brewery. There's a nice range on the website.
What sort of beers have they got then? Is it right across the spectrum?
No, I'd say they're more in the pale wheelhouse. I've got a double IPA, which I still haven't had yet. The sour, which I did get for yourself.
Excellent.
The New England IPA, which I can highly recommend, that's called Freshly Squeezed. That's really good. That's really, really good. That's a very smooth, very fruity New England IPA. Bit of a throwback beer almost. That's really, really nice. And then City Boys, which is this beer, which is, it's not...
Oh, it's not too hazy, is it?
It's translucent more than opaque.
Yes. And what does it taste like? That's the key. The New England was good. How does this compare to that one?
New England's better,
Okay.
but that's not to say this isn't a good beer. I like New England's.
Yeah.
I haven't had a lot of New England's for a while, so that probably helped. But that is a very, very good beer. This is lovely, nice and sessionable, nice and crisp. No real bitterness to it. There's no sort of dry hop or anything here. This is just sort of little bit of a malty backbone, but not a lot. Not going biscuity or anything like that. It's just a little bit of malt. It's crisp. It's fruity. It's refreshing. It hits the brief. It's a good beer.
Excellent. That's a positive thumbs up for True Story Brewery there. Now, let's have a look at what I've got. My brewery, that I've never had a beer from before, I'm trying for the very first time, is Wensleydale Brewery, who say that they're specialists in real ales from the Dales. So real ales from the Dales makes me think this is going to be quite traditional, but this is a New Zealand hazy IPA in a can, which doesn't sound very traditional, does it?
No, and funnily enough, that's really odd. Just while we're talking, I've opened a New Zealand pale as well. But isn't everyone doing a New Zealand beer at the moment? Does it not feel like? Though their hops are suddenly available again. They were a bit of a thing probably 18 months ago, maybe.
Yeah, you saw them quite a bit. Then they sort of fizzled out a bit. Now they seem to be coming back. And if some more traditional breweries are using New Zealand hops, then yes, they must be more readily available now. And the hops involved in this, I should just say, there's a couple I've never heard of before. Pacific Jade is one of them. Ever heard of that?
No, never heard of that.
Kohatu, another one. Heard of that?
No.
Wakatu?
Yes.
And Chinook. There's a lot of lime and pine and spice going on with those 4 hops. So this is going to be quite interesting. Certainly doesn't sound traditional at all, does it?
Not in the slightest. How's it sort of poured out?
Right, I've just poured it with a ridiculously large head, as you can see. Nice and hazy. And the nose does smell a little bit citrusy and a little bit spicy. I just let that head settle down while I tell you that Wensleydale Brewery have been actually going since 2003, so 19 years. They were bought out by 2 guys called Jeff and Carl in 2013, who at the time were only 23 and 22, which was incredibly young to be buying a brewery, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's quite interesting, actually, because I suppose without being too ageist, you've got people there who would have seen when craft came along, they'd be in their 20s, unlike a lot of traditional breweries that would, have probably older people in situ for when we've had sort of craft beer come along.
They'd obviously got a bit of vision, hadn't they, for what the future might hold.
Yeah, you can, you're young enough to see what's happening around you, adapt or carry on.
5 years after that, they moved into their current premises in Leyburn, which I think I've actually seen because I've been there. There's a little heritage railway line called the Wensleydale Railway. I went there last year. Thinking back, I think I've actually seen the brewery. Now, I've just had a sip of this, and it is really, really good.
Really?
Really, that is a really nice surprise. That is superb.
So where did you get this from then? Did you go to them direct?
No, this happened to be on the web shop at Hydrology.
Ah, okay.
Wow, that's one of the best pales I've had in a long time.
Wow, that is high praise.
Lovely subtle hit of lime. And I thought maybe it might be a bit sort of dry and piney for my tastes with the Chinook in there, but it isn't at all. That's really good.
How strong is that?
This is 5.7%. Doesn't taste that strong. High Fives, it's called. I don't know how it's sort of ranked elsewhere, but that'll get a good ranking off me. That's really good.
I'm just having a quick look while you're enjoying your beer just to see what they've got. Straight away, you can still see they're doing the bottling as well.
Well, I'm quite tempted to put in an order with them. I'd be really interested if you had this to see what you think. I think you'd really like it.
The can you've just got there is £3.50.
Best £3.50 you'll spend.
There's an Imperial Stout as well, which is only £6. There's a nice range, actually. There's a couple of the ones they do in bottles or in cans, but there's also a whole separate can range. So it's not just like they've chucked what they were doing in bottles into cans.
Into a can. It's different.
I think there's about 7 different cans there.
That's encouraging, and that's a really lovely surprise because often when you have a beer from somebody who makes those more traditional beers, you think, oh, maybe they're just trying their arm at craft, but no,
cashing in a little bit.
But this is the business.
Brilliant.
It's interview time now on Daftaboutcraft, and a bit of a weird one this time because we actually had Torside lined up to talk to us, and we actually spoke to Chris from Torside, and then I poured barley wine over the computer and lost the audio, and he was a bit too busy to come on and talk to us again, so we've had to find a substitute. But in no way are they second best. It is Bang the Elephant we're talking to, and Nigel from Bang the Elephant in Nottingham. How you doing, mate?
Very well, thank you. Glad to get the call at the last minute. Glad to help you out.
No, I really appreciate it. We've had quite a few of your beers over the time. We've even had one of your beers on the podcast. We like what we see. Other people seem to be talking about you in pretty good, holding you in high regard as well, judging from reviews I've seen on the internet.
I mean, I'm always surprised that people have heard of us at all, to be honest. They mind saying good things about us. We've got a tap takeover in London next week. They got in touch with us, and I wasn't even aware that we were even known in London. No mind them wanting to put all our beer on the tap. Yeah, it's always quite humbling to hear good things.
Say there, you're quite surprised that it's reaching beyond Nottingham. Do you still very much view it that this is something you do? You've got some fans in Nottingham and Nottinghamshire, and that's it.
I mean, I'm aware that we've got a little bit of a kind of a cult following, if you like, for some of the stronger beers that we do and stuff. When people kind of say that it's a little bit bigger than just a small little cult following, it always surprises me.
So did you ever want it to be more than that, or did you just sort of start this with the idea that it was a bit of fun, keep it local?
There's two of us. It's me and Mike. We met at Toyota. Mike still works at Toyota. I've not long left Toyota. So it has literally been just a hobby, really. 2017, we kind of started the thing. We didn't release our first beer until 2018. So really, we've been going 4 years. But obviously, in that 4 years, there's been the dreaded COVID. We love craft beer, and that was kind of the starting blocks for the brewery. We was online at Toyota. We used to work opposite each other, and that was a shared common interest. Quite a few failed attempts at home brewing, actually. And we had an outbuilding at my house that was basically a junk room, a rabbit hutch, basically. There's a large shed that was just used for rabbits and storing junk and stuff. And then the opportunity kind of arose where I thought, you know what, I've always wanted to turn that into a homebrew room. I said to Mike, you fancy starting a brewery up? And he was like, yeah, why not? Sounds like a good idea. And that's kind of the rest is history, if you like.
This sounds like then it started as a bit of fun and it's all got rather out of hand.
It started as a bit of fun, yeah. But the main goal was to get out of Toyota, really, because we both hated working there. That's what we wanted. We wanted to try and build something that could sustain us both and something that we enjoyed doing. And that, that's still to this day what we want out of Bang the Elephant.
So if you've just recently given up your job, is it actually going some way to sustaining you on a financial level?
I'm not taking a wage as such yet. There was a bit of a golden handshake involved from leaving Toyota. So I've got a bit of a cushion, but it's tough times at the minute for, not just for breweries, but families, for any small business, for any business full stop. We're not quite there yet, but we are certainly working on it.
You're surprised when it gets out, beers get out and about a bit more, but that definitely feels like looking from the outside looking in, that all of a sudden, Dave and I talked about it before, you see breweries that come onto the scene, they come on a blaze of glory, then they go back down. I'd say Bang the Elephant's a little bit different. You've been around a little bit while, but all of a sudden it feels like your beers are getting out there more and more now, and they're sort of popping up on all the web shops, and people are they're popping up in the Facebook groups and people are reviewing them. Almost a bit like how Tartarus have gone would be my sort of comparison.
The way we approached it, we wanted to build like a base in the cask market to begin with. We thought that once we've got that foundation in the cask market, then the kind of craft stuff that we wanted to brew, that would just be a natural progression and it would happen. And it just didn't work like that at all. The craft market is a completely different market to the cask market. Yeah. I think once you've made a little bit of a name in the cask market, it is quite different, quite difficult then to try and leave that behind, if you like, and then bridge the gap to the craft market. I think we found that for definite.
This is interesting, actually. Me and Dave have talked about this, about the whole idea of craft beer. Do you think that the term craft beer can sometimes be a bit off-putting for people out there who just like beer?
it can be quite niche sometimes, the craft stuff. I mean, certainly a lot of our beers are very niche. I think if we have made a name for anything, it is for doing
Niche
niche.
beers.
Your kind of normal, general, run-of-the-mill public will go out and they'll buy a Brewdog and a Beavertown, and they'll call that craft, if you like. Whereas the more kind of aficionados,
Nerds.
you know, that nerds, yeah. I mean, turn the nose up at that. When we started out, Beavertown Gamma Ray, that was the beer that we wanted to make. That's how we learned how to brew, because that was mine and Chippo's favourite beer. We learned to brew on a grainfather by brewing Gamma Ray about 50 times, learning, messing it up more than we got it right. It makes me sad now to drink Gamma Ray. Yeah, off-putting the term craft. I don't know. It depends which side of the fence you're sitting on, I guess.
I just think sometimes craft beer, it shoots itself in the foot a little bit.
There's an element of snobbery to it.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. I think that's what I was getting at, really. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to be the one to say that there's a lot of snobs in craft beer, but because I didn't want to offend anyone. But you know, sometimes it is. I've been a craft beer snob myself. You know, I've gone out and had a beer and thought, oh God, what's this sort of thing? When people have said it's a craft beer, and you're thinking, no, it ain't. It's just the nature of the beast, I guess, isn't it?
You sort of touched on there with what you guys do now. Niche, I think, is a fair description. But as you say, you started by learning how to brew Gamma Ray, and you're a million miles away from that now. Was that always the idea? Once you sort of got your feet under you, almost, it was like, right, how can we make this as wild as we can get?
I think not necessarily as wild as we can get. That was never the aim, but it's always been a crowded marketplace. We wanted to do something that made us stand out from the crowd, if you like. We wanted to try and be as individual as we could be. A lot of breweries are chasing the perfect NEPA, aren't they? And we've brewed a lot of pale ales, but we've never, ever felt that we're going to pigeonhole ourselves in, one particular style. The people who do NEPA as well, do them that well that they have cornered that part of the market for my money. The stuff that we're brewing and that sometimes we are getting a bit of notoriety for are beers that you just don't really see anywhere else, I think. And that is part of the charm a little bit. We don't get it right every time. We've brewed some absolute shockers, but we're good triers.
That's nice, isn't it, when you hear somebody from a brewery saying they've brewed some really awful beers? I like that. That's honesty, that is, isn't it?
That's another thing as well. I think another part of, maybe why people kind of give us a bit of airtime and talk about us is because we're just two normal guys. We're pretty approachable. We've got an open door policy down at the brewery. Anyone who wants to come down can come down. There's no airs and graces about us. We're just normal chaps.
I love it. It's so refreshing. Now, look, you're very fond of a collab, aren't you? In fact, you've done one this week, I think, haven't you?
We were supposed to do one today. We were supposed to brew with Guilo today. Have you heard of Guilo?
Yeah.
Pretty big kind of international brand now. We met them, fully enough, at Arboretum Festival in Nottingham. They all turned up and they got, I don't know if you've seen them on social media, they all wear the rainbow jackets and stuff for these festivals and stuff. And as soon as the main dude came, I just thought, he's right up my street he is. We just got chatting and we just hit it off straight away. So we've had this collab planned in for a while, but we've been a bit busy, so the communication side hasn't been the best. He's just had a baby. He's got a 3-year-old daughter, so he hasn't slept properly for 3 weeks. And he said, look, mate, I'm really sorry. I've just completely forgot about it. They're coming down next Thursday.
You've realised then that these are just normal people with normal families and normal everyday things going on in their lives.
They've only just kind of hitting the market over here, but they've got a massive setup in Australia. Now, they're selling to God knows how many places in Australia. I mean, I was talking to him yesterday. One of the supermarkets have about 3 million quid's worth of beer off them a year.
This sounds like a very good idea to team up for a collab with them.
Oh, definitely. They've got a brewery in Australia, they've got a brewery in Hong Kong, and they brew their beers at Brew York in the UK. I just want to get our leg out of the way, our home leg out of the way. So hopefully I can get the return leg over in Australia or Hong Kong. Or even if it's Brew York, we'll take that as a booby prize.
Oh, another brewery you've done a collab with as well is Emperor's.
He brews at our brewery. Yeah, so we brewed the Hobnob Stout with him probably about 2.5 years ago now, the Hobby One Kenobi. We've just been so popular. So we've rebrewed it a couple of times, and we will be releasing the new version, the bourbon barrel-aged version, in the next week or two. It's in can. We're just waiting for the labels.
That sounds amazing, doesn't it?
Have you never tried it?
No.
No. I mean, there's the range on your website is brilliant. As we say, we have tried a few of your beers. We were talking about Balloon Juice, and I know I've had one of your stouts, but the sort of sheer range of stuff you've got on there is very different and very exciting.
We like trying our hands at everything, yeah. If we're known for one thing doing really well, it'll be the Imperial Stouts. We've a few nice Imperial Stouts, I must admit. I mean, I don't know how we do it, but we've somehow managed to stumble across a recipe that works. We've got the Hobby One will come out, the Lumiere, which is another very popular one. We've rebrewed that, and we've got a brand new rum barrel aged Imperial Stout, straight up rum barrel aged. We always do a Christmas trio, Imperial Stout trio, so they'll be available beginning of December, I think. So yeah, excited about them.
Yeah, definitely.
Out of interest, how long did that spend in a barrel?
Which one? The rum one? Yeah, that had about 6 months in the barrel, in the rum barrels. We had one Guatemalan and one Venezuelan rum barrel, and then we've blended them together. Tastes absolutely, no adjuncts or nothing. It's just straight up. It tastes absolutely epic, that does. And then the Lumiere, the first time round, we did that in a bourbon barrel to begin with. Chocolate, cherry, fudge, brownie, ice cream sundae or something. I can never remember it. It's that long-winded. But this version is ex-sherry, ex-whiskey barrel. So that is tasting pretty awesome as well. So there'll be them two and the bourbon barrel-aged Hobby out for Christmas.
So looking down the line then, where would you like to be in 5 years' time, and where do you see yourself?
We don't even know what we're brewing or doing in 5 days' time, and on 5 years' time. The next step is a tap room. We've got to have a tap room. We need a bigger brewery, and we need a bigger kit.
What size is the kit at the moment?
It's five barrel fermenters at the minute. You know, we really, especially with Damien in there as well, who wants to brew more regularly, you know, we need at least double 10 barrel. We're running out of space. We've got like a proper barrel fetish as well at our brewery. So we're just stacked high with spirit barrels, with beer in.
How many barrels have you got on the go?
Well, we've just emptied about 3 or 4, which need refilling again. We've got 2 of the 500 litre ex-whiskey, ex-sherry barrels in there at the minute. Damien's got about 5 or 6 barrels in there. We must have double that. So yeah, we're just running out of space. And every time I see some kind of spirit barrel coming up on one of the forums, my hand starts twitching. I must have it.
Obviously, where you are in Nottingham, you would have thought a Bang the Elephant tap would fit in really well.
Langley Mill just doesn't scream craft beer. I don't know if you know Langley Mill very well, but it's not really the craft beer epicenter that we're after. I mean, Ilkeston has got a decent kind of, a couple of decent craft places and decent micros and stuff. Like I say, it is quite traditional. We've got Eastwood, Ilkeston, Hena. There's quite a good run of micro pubs and stuff, but a lot of them are after clear beer. They want fine beer, and we don't do that very often. When we first moved in there, we bought it off. Yeah, Simon King. He used to brew for Blue Monkey, and then he set his own brewery up, Abstract Jungle. Very good brewery, but more kind of trad stuff. You know, he said to us, because we was always against fining beer, we never wanted to do it. But he says, if you want any beer in the local, you know, you want to hit the local market, you've got to find your beer, because no one will take it otherwise. So we found that out the hard way, and then we started to do some more traditional stuff to try and break into that market. But I think we'd already kind of made a name for ourselves, if you like, for doing the sillier stuff. And they just didn't want it in the local area. You know what I mean? That if they wanted a traditional pale ale, then they go to Castle Rock, or they go to Blue Monkey or Grasshopper, very big in that area. And they just didn't want our traditional stuff. And they definitely didn't want our, our hazy, weird stuff.
It sounds like you want to be getting yourself into Nottingham then, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Even our cask beer, I would call craft cask. The hazy, juicy pales. And our market is more in a town centre, definitely.
I think what you do, and if you had a tap room in Nottingham and you could have a little scene there with Neon Raptor and Black Iris and yourselves, be a real destination for craft beer drinkers to come to.
Nottingham is such a great city not just for craft beer, but it's like a hotbed of good restaurants,
Yeah.
and it's just a fantastic night out, isn't it? And you've got your big three, your like Neon Raptor, your Liquid Light, and your Black Iris, but you've also got your Totally Brewed and your Magpie and Mardibum and Navigation, and there's so many good breweries in that area. And then you widen your area a little bit over by us. You've got Alter Ego and Urban Chicken. You've obviously got Reckless Dweeb, who we did the collab with last week.
We should just tell listeners actually how he came to get in touch with you, and that was through Ben at Reckless Dweeb, because we've had Ben on the podcast before. He put us in touch with you. So what was the collab you did with Ben? What was that all about?
It was a big stout, really. That's all. If anyone wants to do a collab with us, then they just want to do a big stout. So that's what we did. So I went round his house, and it was the absolute consummate host. We got there within 10 minutes of us getting there. So a car pulled up, and some bloke got out of the car, got a great big continental buffet style platter out. Yeah, absolute legend. The beer was all over his garage floor by the next day, as Imperial Stouts normally are. Like creep out the top of the fermenter. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's bubbling away nicely now, and hopefully it'll do a thing.
So when will that be out and about then?
It'll struggle to be out before Christmas. Imperial Stouts, they need 2 or 3 weeks in the fermenter, and then the longer you wait before they come out, the better, really. They just get better with age, so you don't want to rush these things.
Have you got a name for that one?
Ben likes to use geeky, nerdy movie references, he said. I think the discussion was something around the maybe batteries not included movie, and then we were just going to leave him with it. So yeah, I'm not sure what he's going to decide on, but it'd be something Dweeby, we like to say.
Dweeby, yeah. Well, it's one to watch out for in the new year anyway. So here's a question for you. When you're celebrating Christmas, what are you going to be drinking?
I will 100% having a can of Hobby One Kenobi, Lumiere and Rum Bar, which is the rum barrel aged one. But last year, I went absolutely all out on Imperial Stouts, a massive order from Left Field Beer, who we absolutely love. Done a couple of collabs with them as well, actually. Bought a shed load of Impies. I couldn't drink them. They were too much. After about 3 or 4 days of drinking Impies, give me a lager or something.
I've got loads of Imperial Stouts that I bought, and then they just sit there because you don't always want to drink them, do you?
That's it, yeah. I can have 1 or 2 of an evening, but, when you're Christmas mode and you've got the finger buffet out and you're sat in your pants and I don't want to be drinking like 10 cans of Impy.
So what would be your go-to lighter beer then for Christmas?
That is a really tough question. I'm completely disillusioned with Neepers and stuff like that. They all taste the same to me. I love a Jester King style wild beer, or like a Three Fontaine, or that would be my go-to palate cleanser, if you like, something like that.
And would there be any ambitions to have a sort of a bash at doing some wild stuff in 2023? So do a little bit of the mixed firms and all that, and the Brits.
I've got some wild stuff in the container outside the room. It's nearly 2 years old now, and it's still coming along nicely. It's not ready yet. I think we're going to have to do another one and blend it. But we made our own makeshift cool shit. I went down to Summit, hired a van, and I went down to Somerset to an old cider making / cheese farm. I bought a great big cheese bath, weighs an absolute ton. It was all like rotted on the bottom. But I brought it about 250 quid, I think. But me and my missus somehow managed to lift it into the van between us and then get it off about God knows how. Managed to get it welded up by a local stainless steel welder, and that's what we've used as our cool shit, an old cheese bath. But, there's some pictures on Instagram. They're transferring it from the cheese bath to barrels. There's a cidery across the road from the brewery, so we made the work. We put it in the cheese bath. We wheeled it over to the cidery, left it in the cidery for the night. And then for it to cool down to temperature to transfer to the barrels. And then we had a forklift under this cheese bath. We were balancing it on casks and all sorts to try and get it to the height to get it into the barrels. It was quite a comical couple of days, actually.
Somebody asked me recently, they said, what is craft beer? Can you describe it to me? That is craft beer. That is it. That is it in a nutshell. I love it. Have you got any other amusing stories like that?
Got a good story about the only ever award that we've won. I sent a beer off to Chesterfield Camera Beer Festival. It was a collaboration with another local brewery, actually, who helped us out loads when we were starting out, Beeston Hop. Absolute great guy, John Richardson. And we'd been talking about this collab for ages and we never got around to doing it. And finally, we're like penciled in a date, said, yeah, let's get this done. So, I mean, he's like an artisan brewer himself. He brews a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, fantastic brewery. So we decided on this Belgian blonde ale, I think it was, and we called it Forward with the Goat because it's an old Belgian proverb for basically get on with it. So I thought it fitted quite well because we've been talking about this collab for ages, never got around to it. So let's get on with it. So Forward with the Goat. So this beer went up to Chesterfield Camera Beer Festival and it won Beer of the Festival or something. So Chesterfield Camera got in touch with us and they said, we'd love to come down and present you with your award. There's quite a few of us who want to come down. Do you mind if we come down for a visit? Maybe drink some beer and stuff? Like, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, come down and see us. It says, well, can you put some beer on for us? We'll pay you for it. I was like, well, we don't want paying as such. We'll stick the beer on for you. And if you could leave us a donation at the end, I mean, that would be really good. We'd love that. That'd be fantastic. You know, the day of the presentation came and they were going to come down. And I'd just popped out for half hour. I can't remember where I'd gone. And I got a phone call from Mike, who was still down at the brewery. He was like, you need to get back here now. Basically, the Chesterfield Camera had turned up in a full coach, like a National Express style coach. There was about 70 of them. So I've come back. We were doing a collab actually with another local brewery, Linear, on that day. And I come back here and I swear to God, you couldn't move in the brewery. There was literally about 70 people in there. It was a great day and they drank us dry. And I swear to God, right, as soon as the final drop of beer left the last cask, they went, everybody back on the board. And that was it. And they never left us a penny or nothing. But the best bit about it is they presented with this award that said, best beer of the festival, banned the elephant. So they got the name of the brewery wrong, or follow the goat. So they got the name of the beer wrong as well.
So they got the name of the brewery wrong, name of the beer wrong, drank all your beer and left you nothing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So even though that is our only official award, we don't count it as an award because it was the wrong brewery name and wrong beer name.
Awesome. Ever thought of writing a book? I think I get the feeling we could sit here all night talking about Bang the Elephant and the craft beer scene in general. But look, we should say thank you very much for joining us. Very, very entertaining. And if I want to pop down with a coach load of Daftaboutcraft listeners sometime, is that all right?
Yeah, I'll leave the donation bucket by the door.
Yeah, please do. Unlike Camera, we will pay.
And if people want to get hold of your beers, either on your website or on your socials, how do they get in touch with you? How's best to get hold of beers from yourselves?
Certainly every big Cam release, we always shout about it from the rooftops on the socials, Facebook, Instagram. Always respond to people on Instagram and Facebook. So keep an eye out on the socials and, you know, hit the web shop if needs be. We've got a off-sales license as well if you want to pop down and purchase direct from the brewery. So there's many, many options available.
It's time on the podcast for a bit of this now, the section we call Tried and Tested, where we look at the beers we've drunk over the last few weeks since our last episode and tell you what we've enjoyed the most. And it's a tried and tested with a slight difference this time, because a few weeks ago we both met up at Northern Monk's Dark and Wild Festival at the Old Refectory in Leeds. Dave B and Dave D were in the house. Very loud house.
Very loud house.
And we had some lovely beers, and we'll be picking our favourite one. Dave, let's start with you. What's your favourite beer at Dark and Wild?
The beer I didn't have at Dark and Wild.
Tell all.
Yeah, so I think you and I had very different experiences for Dark and Wild, and some of that was definitely not Dark and Wild's fault, I hasten to add, for reasons that will become clear. Basically, I journeyed up the morning of the festival, so that's Ipswich to Leeds in a day, which is always a long journey. That's fine.
It's a long way anyway, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. I'd made my peace with that. I went from Ipswich to Leicester. That was a great journey. We went to the afternoon session, which ran from 12 till 5:15. I was sort of aiming to get there for about 1, thinking that, you don't need nearly 5 hours of imperial stouts. Unfortunately, the trains had other ideas, so we were an hour late getting there. So already I'm down to 2 3/4 hours. And then I should have looked by now, but I haven't because that's a little bit lazy of me. But all the breweries stopped pouring at 4:15. So I actually got about 2 1/4 hours.
I think, in fairness to the breweries, I think they're on a curfew, weren't they? They had to shut off at such a time, but just that you didn't know about it.
And they may well have done. And obviously there's the evening session to get ready for and everything. That said, there is a gap. That was annoying because you're then left with not a lot of time. And as I say, it's not all Northern Monk and Dark and Wild's fault, but I think perhaps if your session lasts from those hours to then, maybe just let it run till then and then just stop and you have half an hour run off. It wasn't like the evening session was starting at 6, was it? I think the evening session started at 7, if I'm right.
I think so, yeah.
So that was a bit of a downer. And then the other part of it was, as Dave said, very loud house. Now, they have music there, which is great. I love music at a festival. I think it adds something to it.
Definitely, yeah.
Nothing wrong with that at all. And they lent into the Dark and Wild style, so you had quite a lot of metal. Again, no problem. I like metal. I've got no issue with some of that. That said, I do like to go to a festival to be able to talk to people, and you could not do that.
We don't get to see each other very often, do we? Other than on a screen like this. So we sort of met up, and you need a big sort of ear trumpet to hear each other. It was so loud,
Yeah, so a few years ago when I went to this, they'd put the bands outside, and that worked, I thought, brilliantly, because you then had a load of free floor space on the 2 floors that they use for the festival that you can manoeuvre around quite easily. You could probably have a chat to the brewers if you've got the time or they've got the time. It was a better experience for me, at least. This way, you had the bands up on the top floor, which was incredibly loud. And then underneath where the tap is, they were piping music through, not from the live bands, they were piping music through, but they were piping it through at an incredibly loud level.
It seemed to get louder as the day went on, actually, didn't it?
So basically, you wanted to stand outside to have a proper conversation, and being the end of October in the north, it was a rainy, cold afternoon, wasn't it? So that didn't really work.
I guess things conspired against them a little bit with the weather because it wasn't the nicest of days, was it? But the thing I like to do is I like to talk to the brewers and the people serving the beer, and it was a bit more difficult to do that because of the volume.
It was sort of largely impossible. You could sort of ask for what beer you wanted, and then you were just sort of smiling at each other while they poured it, and then you sort of went on your way, because actually having a conversation and again having the space to then not be in the way if you wanted to chat, I thought was really difficult because it was a little bit busy.
Yeah,
especially on the top floor, the bands were taking up a decent chunk of the corner. It didn't flow very well for me.
So your favourite beer didn't come from the festival?
No. I didn't have that many beers. I did not get good value for my ticket, but that's partly on me. That's not Northern Monk or Dark and Wild's fault. I didn't get good value for that. However, the session finished. We went round the corner. There is a pub just round the corner from the refectory, if you know the Leeds area, called Cross Keys, which I've been to before. They have a great selection of craft lines as well. They do really good food too. And we had, having had some stouts, Suds from Bullhouse Brew Co, who featured as one of my brew to me's quite recently, as I got them in the bruiser box. And Suds is a bit like a steady rolling man. It's a nice fruity pale. It's less than 5%.
It's a classic pale, isn't it?
Yeah. but it got my tried and tested, not only because it was a let me up after some stouts, but just because the environment was great. You know, we all sat around the table upstairs. We could all hear each other. It was sort of what you want when you're going to sit and drink beer with people. And just, it is a really good beer. It was great on, good in can, but great on keg. But just, it gets to tried and tested because it was just such an enjoyable experience on what a day that was a bit annoying because my journey back was even worse.
Oh, yeah, the journey back that included a taxi ride from, where was it?
Nottingham.
Nottingham to Leicester.
Yeah. The journey back lasted about 5.5 hours for a 2-hour journey, thanks to a tree falling down on the line.
I think it's safe to say that the travel situation conspired against you that day. But it just goes to show you also that beer is very much not about the actual beer you're drinking, because we had a wide variety of stouts and right across the world at Dark and Wild, but you enjoyed an IPA, nice and peaceful, in a pub next door afterwards, and that was your favourite beer. And circumstance and situation can make you enjoy a beer a huge amount. I think I checked in sort of 20 odd beers during the festival. My favourite one was actually Northern Monk's Dark and Wild City 2022 Mochaccino Stout. 9% Imperial Double Coffee Stout, straight up stout, coffee, everything you want it to be. And, we tried some of the foreign beers, and for me, Northern Monk's own beer won the day. Yeah,
the gap's really narrowed now, hasn't it? I think there was a time where American stouts and American pales and everything were not light years ahead, but they were years ahead. And now very difficult to really sort of...
I think if you'd have drunk all those beers blind, you wouldn't be able to say, oh, yes, this is from America. That gulf doesn't exist so much now, does it?
No, definitely not. I think probably still at the top level, but then I think you could still put some of the British breweries and other UK breweries at the top level up against it, and I think it'd come out very favourably.
Get in touch with us on Twitter and Instagram at Daftaboutcraft1.
Right, it's time on the podcast for The Brewer's Wife, where Sam, one half of Copper Beech in Kidderminster in Worcestershire, joins us for a funny story sometimes, or a topical story. What you got for us this time, Sam?
Well, we've had a bit of lighthearted and we've had a bit of a sort of economical discussion, let's say. So I thought we would keep things a little bit more, I don't like the word serious, but, everything can't be lighthearted all the time, can it? So I thought one of the most important subjects that we like to open up and keep going is all surrounding mental health. So I thought we could have a bit of a chat about that today.
Because for those of you who don't know, we first met Dan and Sam through the podcast, found out they live locally, and then we became friends. But when we had them on, we talked a lot about mental health and about your husband Dan's mental health and how beer helped him progress through all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Copper Beech Brewing Company was born from kind of Dan's need to escape the 9-to-5 commercial job that he was in, which he maintains there's no issue with those kinds of jobs. They just don't sit very well with him. He doesn't cope very well in those environments sometimes. So yeah, Copper Beech was a bit of an escape. Started off as a hobby, ended up as a business.
So that's really interesting. So what he used as an escape and to help his mental health has now turned into a fully fledged business. It started at the bottom of the garden. Now you're in a unit and he's brewing beer more and more and more. How's that impacted his mental health?
Oh yeah, it's completely gone back to the start.
He's going to have to find something else now, isn't he?
I know. If he starts walking dogs, then you'll know why. It's funny, isn't it? How things can turn so easily once they get a bit serious. We will say something's fun until it has stakes, and then suddenly there's a lot more to consider. So yeah, it certainly hasn't remained that escapism it once was.
That's what happens, isn't it, though, when you get interested? Me and Dave were interested in beer, so we started a podcast, and now here we are every few weeks working on the podcast, talking to people, editing podcasts, and all of a sudden it takes up a lot more of your time, and it stops being the escape. Although it's great fun, obviously, it stops being quite the escape it was when you first began it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some pressure.
So how does Dan cope with that side of things now? And how do you cope with it, watching him struggle through it sometimes?
It's really hard, actually, yeah. I can't sugarcoat it. He had quite a long struggle with his mental health, which, he had therapy for, and that massively helped him. So, for anyone who is in that position where they don't know what to do or, what might help. Just talking to somebody or having that talk therapy really helped out. And I know there's definitely lots of different avenues you can go down. And I would definitely implore people to explore them if they need to. But that only goes so far, doesn't it, really? It takes a lot of different methods to stay above water, and sometimes they don't work, and sometimes things set them off. When you're in a good place and you wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be positive today, it can be the smallest thing. Yeah, the smallest thing just gets you right back to where you were. So I don't really know how to answer that, actually, in a way, because it's a constant juggling act.
I know how busy he is all the time. And like you say, that slightest thing could easily set him back somewhat. You must be very conscious of that the whole time, really. Yeah,
now some days I'm better at sort of being supportive and soft than others. Other days, I have my own stuff as well. I've got, a baby and I would like to say I've got a life, but
you used to have.
I've got a baby. So some days you don't have the bandwidth to offer that support, and that makes things even more difficult. But and not knowing kind of what will set him backwards or what will trigger something. Yeah, the good days are great, the bad days are bad, and that is all part of the package of mental health.
I guess one thing that must really help him is when he sees people enjoying his beers. That must be a big boost.
Huge. Yeah, I mean, it makes it worth it, doesn't it, when you do anything in life and you see someone appreciating it.
Yeah.
And it could just be one person who goes, oh God, this beer's fantastic. He used to be terrible at taking compliments. He used to be terrible, he'd be worse at taking compliments than criticisms.
Yeah.
But I think now they really do. They do lift him quite a lot.
So I guess one of the things with craft beer is the whole time, we're all out there drinking beers and checking stuff in on Untapped and all this sort of thing. How does he deal with Untapped? I've asked other brewers this, and it's interesting. Some of them laugh at it. Some of them take it really seriously. Where does Dan fit into that spectrum?
It depends on the day, to be honest.
Right, yeah.
And it depends on the review, and it depends on the beer.
Yeah.
Do because we've all got a right to our opinion, and our tastes are all so different. Yeah. And things like Untapped give everybody the opportunity to express their own feelings about things. However, if you crack open a can of Stella, I'm picking on Stella, there are other generic beers available, but you crack open a can of Stella and you don't enjoy it and you give it a 1 on Untapped, no one's going to go home and lose sleep that night. No one in that process of making that can of Stella is going to think twice about that. But if you crack open a can of Birdie, where heart and the soul has been poured into not only building the recipe initially but perfecting it over a couple of years and trying different things and feeling like you've cracked it, and then someone opens it, drinks it and gives it a 2.5 or what. No, I don't think anyone has given Birdie a 2.5, but just as an example.
In the first instance, I guess you think as a brewer, somebody doesn't like it, but does that then spur him on to do better, or does he just ignore those sort of things now?
He's one of those people that always wants to do better anyway.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't matter if that review came in bad or good or at all. He's one of those people that it will never quite be perfect.
Yeah.
So he's always thinking, even he'll say to me, oh, this is it now, I'm not messing with that again, this is great.
A couple of weeks later
he's like, oh well, actually, I feel like the water profile might, I don't know, something like that, and then it's like, oh yeah, it's better now. So yeah, I think regardless of outside opinion, he will always be striving to improve things constantly, which is not a bad quality to have. But do
you think it's a useful tool, Untapped? Do you think the craft beer world would be a better place without it?
No, not necessarily. I like that it opens a discussion. I like that people potentially see a beer that their friend has checked in and then they've never seen that beer before. And particularly for a small brewery like ours, if someone checks a Copper Beach in, there could be 10 people on their friends list who've never heard of us.
Yeah.
For all the times that we get great reviews on there, that ultimately is going to help grow small businesses and small breweries. So no, I don't necessarily think we'd be better off without it at all. I just think that potentially people don't have as much of a thought process behind it.
I think, I guess, people, unless they're closely connected with the industry, don't always understand the impact a rating could have on somebody else along the line.
Well, because why would you?
Yeah, it's just an app, isn't it, on your phone?
It's like anything in life you pick up, you don't think about anything to do with where it came from.
No.
So yeah, I think, and so many things affect the enjoyment of a beer, don't they?
Absolutely.
Where you're drinking it.
Yeah.
What temperature the beer is.
Who you're drinking it with.
Who you're drinking it with. What you've eaten.
Yeah.
What you've drank just before it.
Yeah.
There's so many things that can impact the way that tastes to you or the way you're experiencing it, that I think everything on any kind of review site for anything in life needs to just be taken with a bit of a pinch of salt.
It's a bit like, isn't it, when you look at reviews of hotels on TripAdvisor, one person will say it was fantastic and rate it 5 stars. Next one, it was a dump, 1 star.
Yeah.
Everybody's different, aren't they? And people rate things and rank things differently, and you've just got to deal with it sometimes, I guess.
But when did we become such a rateable, existence? Everything's got a rating, hasn't it?
Everything now.
Everything's got a rating.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like that Black Mirror episode, I don't know if you've seen it, with Bryce Dallas Howard. There's an episode where you basically rate people as people.
As people.
Yeah, it's fascinating actually. It's a very good watch.
Awesome.
But yeah, we've become sort of that culture, haven't we, where everyone likes to put a rating on things. And
I was talking to the guy who runs our local cafe here, and about Facebook, and he was saying he doesn't look at reviews of his place on Facebook anymore because he finds it makes him too angry half the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's advantages to being the kind of person who can just switch off from that. But I'm not one of those people, and I don't think Dan is either. I think he's become better at accepting that, not everyone's going to open every can of beer and give it a 5-star review. Yeah. And he's certainly not one to hang on to things surrounding that kind of thing. But yeah, when you've put a lot of effort and time into something and someone doesn't enjoy it, it is ultimately gonna give you a little twinge of... Oh.
And I know Dan he said to me, he's trying to rein back on his time on social media because he finds some of it so depressing, and it almost drags you down when you're seeing not necessarily stuff about his beer, but negative things in the industry in general. The thing about social media, there's not that much positive stuff on there really, especially Twitter, for example.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I despise Twitter.
Yeah.
I always have. I don't understand it, for one, but...
It just seems to be a platform for people to be particularly obnoxious to each other, from what I can say.
And I mean, if you're on Twitter, it's no dig at you, but Twitter's 50% narcissists.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time, but I just sort of watch or read people's stuff on there and I just think, this is too intense, a lot of this. It's just a lot of people bitching at each other, and which again must be bad for people's mental health. I
think social media is, if you have any kind of struggle with mental health, I think social media is the worst possible place in life you can spend your time.
Yeah.
Because it just feeds into every insecurity you've ever had.
Yeah.
It's, all this stuff about the state of the economy and everything that's going on at the minute. If you're worried about it, don't go to social media, particularly Twitter, because, you can feed into every fear you've ever had on social media.
Yeah.
I love social media. I really do. I don't like Twitter, but I'm a massive Instagram fan. I have a lot of time for TikTok, and I think there's free dopamine everywhere. But the algorithm gets to know what you spend time looking at, and if you spend time looking at those depressing things,
you're going to see more.
You are going to see more of them, and then you're in a bit of a vicious cycle. So yeah, social media is a whole other conversation. But from a mental health perspective, you have to be very careful what you expose yourself to, and how much you let it in.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.
So this is the point of the podcast where we'd usually be playing the heavy, intimidating music and saying this is hype or tripe, but it's not hype or tripe. This is our very own 12 beers of Christmas. Now, our inboxes are bombarded with advent calendars at the moment. Our own podcast sponsor, Hall Beer, are doing their own advent calendar as well at the moment. But we have got an idea, and we're going to do it right now, where we talk you through the 12 days of Christmas, and we match up a different beer or a different style of beer for every one of those 12 days. Starting on Christmas Eve, when you traditionally put up your Christmas tree, although everybody puts it up way before that, right through to the 4th of January, the night before you take your tree down. Should be fun, Dave.
Yes. I don't know about you, but our Christmas tree goes up at the earliest, probably December the 3rd or 4th, because my birthday's on the 3rd and I refuse to have it up before then. So,
well, ours is usually the second weekend of December.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. I can't be. I'm not that big a Christmas person in that sense, so I don't like to see trees in November and things like that.
No, it's too early, isn't it? Well, the twinkly music has ended. That means we can start now, Dave. December the 24th, it's Christmas Eve. What are you drinking?
Maybe you finished work at home and you've gone out down the pub. Maybe you finished the office in town, you've gone down the pub afterwards, and you're going to get on it a bit. Like, that's just sort of natural. People have a few on Christmas Eve, don't they? Like, maybe family have come over and you're having a few as well.
Oh, I hope not.
It's at 10, half 10, and you're just thinking, oh, you know what? I might crack open that massive Imperial Stout I've been holding on to, or that tipper, and really start Christmas with a bang. Well, my suggestion for a beer here is to go the complete other way.
If you go big, you're going to be starting Christmas with a headache, not with a bang.
Exactly. It's a long period of festivities, and I don't necessarily know now, and this is probably as much my age talking as anything now, but I don't necessarily want to be waking up on Christmas Day with a hangover and a headache and a dehydrated and taking a while to get going. So why not go for a table beer? Now, perhaps you've had a stout beer before or something, and you'll think, oh, that won't taste of anything. We've talked about this on previous episodes. Table beers are here to stay, really, really good. Now, the obvious choice is the Colonel's table beer, because it is the table beer that all table beers are judged by, but there's so many good ones now.
I've got to tell you this. I was in the House of Trembling Madness in York the other day, Dave, and I had Colonel's table beer on tap. Oh, my goodness. I've had it out of a bottle lots of times. It's good. This was different level.
And there's so many different varieties of that as well. They rotate the hops on that quite a lot. But I can well believe that. I'm quite jealous that you had that, actually. But the Colonel is the sort of gold standard for table beers, but loads of breweries do them now, and you'll struggle to find a bad table beer pretty much. Of course, next day is the big day, and what are you having on Christmas Day, Dave?
We always have a turkey in this house, obviously. Big turkey, as big as we can get. Huge turkey. There's four of us here, but we have a big turkey, so it lasts for days. So we do the turkey sandwiches, the turkey curry, the turkey pie. I love all that. It's great. But what do you drink with your turkey? Usually a nice bottle of wine or something. Not this year. And this is what I'm actually going to be drinking because I bought it. Unvined, which is a grape sour beer from Wild Beer Co. I bought 3 bottles of it. And I also bought another bottle of something similar, which probably will end up having as well. It's a beery twist on wine, this is. That's how Wild Beer describe it themselves. Fruity, medium acidity, quite dry. You know, if you like a nice glass of white wine, this could be the ideal beery stand-in for the wine. It's just an easy sipper to enjoy with your dinner. £5.75 for a 330ml bottle. Like I say, I've already got them. If you like your beer and you want something to go with your Christmas lunch, that looks superb. And we'll keep it nice and clean, ready for a few bigger beers later in the evening.
Much like Boxing Day.
Boxing Day. What are we going to do on Boxing Day? Well, my Boxing Day beer is a barley wine. Imagine that you've got the buffet going throughout the day. You nip in for a bit of ham and a bit of turkey and a bit of beef here and there, and you get to the end of the night and you think, oh, I just want something to wind down with slowly now. The beer you want is a barley wine from J.W. Leeds. I've had this very beer. It's the beer that went over my laptop. I had the 2014 version of this beer. There's a lot of different versions you can get. They're all out there, straight from J.W. Leeds or other distributors. Oh my goodness. Before I poured it over, this was fantastic.
You were really enjoying it, in fairness, weren't you?
Yeah, too much.
Too much, it would seem, yeah. We got some last year for our cheese tasting segment, which will be back in the next episode. And the J.W. Lee's barley wines were a massive hit. I think I had a port-aged one, because they did.
There's variations.
Rad Beer, hopefully, perhaps we'll get another stash again this year, or somewhere else might, because...
That's right. They had a whole load of them, didn't they? And we bought a few different ones from across the years.
And they were incredibly well priced as well. So if they come around, if you see them anywhere this year, and they shouldn't be much more than sort of a £5 a bottle.
Yeah, they were just a few quid a bottle, weren't they? Yeah.
Snap them up. They are 100% worth getting.
Yeah. Don't pour it over. Don't waste it. Get it away from your electrical equipment. Get it away. So that will see you nicely into slumber on Boxing Day, which leads us on to the 27th of December. What are you going to drink on this day, Dave?
You might visit some relatives who perhaps aren't into craft beer as much. They might have heard you are, and it's that awkward thing of, oh, they've bought you some craft beer, but it's not really. And also, you don't want to be the person taking like the 10% tipper to the Tuesday dinner or whenever the 27th falls this year. You know, everyone else is sitting there either having the Carlsberg or a bottle of wine, and there's you sat with 4 really weird beers. That
Yeah, you craft beer snob in the corner.
Yeah, can I try a bit? No. My idea for this is perhaps have a look at what the supermarkets have got to offer. This is a little bit of a contentious point because we've talked about this, and I think there's a few breweries now that you could say are macro craft. They straddle both now. Like, the production of it is so high that they can't really truly call themselves craft breweries anymore because they are filling a supermarket order each week. But I think there's other ones that are doing it a little bit and then actually reinvesting it and using it to actually still be able to do both.
And we're talking about names like Vault City here in Tesco and Polly's in Marks and Spencer's, not saturating the supermarkets with their beers, but just a core range of beers just to keep them going for them to invest in other parts of their business.
Exactly. And mine for this is Soundwave from Siren, which is actually everywhere now, but they've done a DDH version of it as well. But the normal version is just as good.
Siren, with their supermarket beers, provide a nice way into craft beer for people at Christmas who may not have had craft beers before.
Exactly. These are the kind of beers that you can share with people who might not necessarily know much about craft or have ever been exposed to it. And then it's a good way of spreading the word a little bit. You know, we used to do Supermarket Suite on older episodes, and then that just sort of became a segment which was just a bit tricky because it was tricky to sort of square the circle of craft beer and the supermarket.
Yeah.
But I think there is a place for supermarket beers, and I sort of think a day like this where you might perhaps be out and about, and it might not be the 27th, it might be any day within that period, but you know you're going to go to someone's house, they're going to be like, what beer would you like? And it's going to not perhaps be the offering you want. You can take your own, but maybe don't raid your own stash. You know, stock up with these kind of beers. You can share them, spread the word, and hopefully it might convert someone, or it might just get someone interested in, oh, okay, what was that like? Okay, I might go in the supermarket. Oh, I found this one from when we had those beers at Christmas. I found this one. What do you think it is?
Yeah, it could be the beer that sets somebody else out on their craft beer journey, couldn't it? It really could. So the 5th day of Christmas, December the 28th.
Well, I'm thinking by now you've done an awful lot of sitting around. You've done an awful lot of drinking, and you probably want to actually get out and about again and have a trot. With that in mind, it might be that you do a walk to a pub, or just a walk in the local area. Like
no, Dave, there's no walks without pubs. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, this is very true. And obviously, if your local pub is open over the festive period, please do visit them.
Yes, that's a good point, actually, yeah.
But my idea is hopefully we get not the super mild Christmases that we've had the last couple of years, and we get a nice wintry Christmas, so it's cold and crisp.
There's nothing worse, is there, than waking up on Christmas Day and it's like 15 degrees outside. What?
Yeah. No. Indeed. I like a bit of frost on the ground, and it's cold all day, and that's perfect December weather.
And it's perfect for drinking this beer you're going to tell us about.
Yeah, so hopefully you get that kind of day, you go for a nice walk, and then either you have it at home and you go, or you're lucky enough to go in a pub and it's on cask, and it is Titanic's Plum Porter, which is probably on the bingo card for Daftaboutcraft because I do mention it wherever I can, just because in considering the volume it is produced in now, it hasn't really dropped in quality very much at all. I'd say the cans are slightly synthetic, and I can kind of understand why because of how much is being produced, but that doesn't actually translate through to the cask.
So there's also the Grand Reserve version, isn't there, which I actually had at a camera festival a few weeks ago, and I think I actually prefer the original version. I remember you putting me onto this and saying, you've got to drink this, and I was like, no, it's not going to be very good, it's just a cask beer. But when I had it for the first time, goodness me, it is wonderful, isn't it?
It's so good. It's just that nose. Every time it is plums, and then it is sweet to start with, but never too sweet, and then it gives way to being a little bit malty, but not too malty, and it just keeps coming back for more. It's just a great beer. If you've never had it, please do seek it out. I would say get it in bottle or get it on cask if you can. Maybe avoid cans.
So New Year's Eve is approaching. We're on to the December the 29th.
Right, so having been responsible on Christmas Eve, now I'm thinking, you're
going to let all hell loose now.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that beer that you have been holding on to in your stash for an occasion, and then you're always waiting for the occasion, and you find another beer.
I've got about 30 of these beers, though, Dave.
Well, here we go then. Here's a great opportunity to knock it down one or two or three. Have those beers. Why not? This is the season where you're allowed to enjoy yourself, be jolly, just treat yourself. There's an awful lot going on in the world at the moment, which is not very pleasant at all or very fun. So just enjoy the season, enjoy having some time off from work. Hopefully, if you're not, where you can get your time off, just enjoy.
Grab that beer that's been lurking at the back of the cupboards for a special occasion.
Exactly, and just treat this day as a special occasion. Why not? We only ever get one go at this, so you may as well make the most of it.
Sound advice. I'm just mentally running through my mind those stouts I've got on which big stout I'm going to have on that day. December the 30th.
The nature of our podcast and the nature of how we drink beer is we sort of obsess about sort of beer a lot. Not everyone does. And you'll definitely find in this period more than ever when you're thrust into people you probably don't see much else apart from this one time a year. But, no one else actually cares that the latest 9.5 Doppelbock has come out and you're like, oh, I really want to get this in my stash, but I couldn't. And then, people just glaze over.
Always remember that your interest isn't everybody else's interest.
Exactly. Yeah, to just sort of go one further from the 29th, there's all these beers around and we obsess about them, but actually this is a time for family and for friends more than anything. And perhaps you have to go to a pub where, oh no, it's 3 fizzy lagers and a couple of ales, which you wouldn't even call cask or craft, you might be in a bad situation from that point of view, but does it really matter? If you're all together and it's an enjoyable afternoon, does it really matter if your afternoon was framed with 6% beers or 5 pints of Foster's?
Yeah, what you're saying is it's Christmas, make the most of the situation you're in and just have a beer at the pub or with family and friends and enjoy it. Whatever is on offer, it's beer. Sometimes we talk about craft beer, but it is all just beer, isn't it?
And also that situation I just painted where it's going to be 5 pints of Foster's. I mean, you're going to be unlucky now to go into that. I would say a lot of pubs offer a lot better than that nowadays.
They really do. I mentioned before I was in Trembling Madness in York. We went into another pub as well, more of a sports bar really, but they'd got a selection of craft on in there, 6-7 different lines of craft. Now more and more bars are thinking more about it and putting some more interesting beers on, so make the most of it, find something, drink it, don't moan.
Couldn't have put it better.
But on December the 31st, you need something really special. What you want is a Mahusive Stout, 25%. I don't drink it all to yourself, but the beer I've got in mind is the Icebox Dark Imperial Stout from Keys in the Netherlands. This is a sharer, and I'm thinking, you're watching Jules Holland on BBC Two, which was recorded in October. Ruined my life when I found that out. Sorry if I've
just ruined my life.
Sorry if it's ruined yours as well.
Yeah, a little bit.
Well, they've got Kylie Minogue on there one year, and I thought, well, no, there is no way Kylie Minogue is sitting in a BBC studio at midnight on New Year's Eve, and I looked it up and she was playing some gig somewhere. So yes, it's recorded well in advance. Sorry about that. But as you're watching Jules Holland and Co. pretend it's nearly the new year, you want to crack open this beer. Like I say, it's 25%. I'm thinking it comes in a 330ml can. So say you've got a couple of neighbours round, a couple of friends, 4-6 little sherry glasses, little tipple in each. See you in the new year with this. What do you reckon?
I think that's great. I love the way of just sharing it out like that. I think that's spot on. No one needs to be a hero and drink a 25% can to themselves. Sharing it out so everyone gets to enjoy it. I think that's spot on. I like the fact Keys put that in a 330 as well. That's how it should be. You don't need a 440 of that. It'd be madness. It's a different touch on having champagne or something at 12 o'clock. I really like that.
I love that sherry glass thing. I'll tell you where that comes from. My neighbours, who you've met, came round recently. Jason and Elise are our neighbours, and Elise doesn't really like craft beer. And I said, no, you've got to try this. She goes, oh, just a tiny bit. So I got her a little sherry glass, and she was trying all these different beers in sherry glass measures. And it's a really great way of introducing non-beer, non-crafty beer drinkers to new flavours.
And did you convert her? Did you find something she liked?
Well, when we go out on a Friday night now to a local pub round here, what does she drink? Steyr Steady Rolling Man. From a go-to, which should usually be a wine or something, Steady Rolling Man. It's a way to convert people sherry-sized measures. Anyway, so look, you've woken up New Year's Day. Hopefully you're still feeling okay, but it's a new year. Time for something a little bit different. You've got Triannuary, you've got Dry-January.
You've got all those promises you're going to make about going to the gym more.
Yeah, we probably won't be doing those, but what we can do is start off for New Year low-key with some not very strong beers. And one of the first people we should gravitate towards is Mash Gang, who are specialists in very light beers and no alcohol beers. And, they've got loads of beers to fit the bill. A lot of bottle shops have their beers in stock now. They've got a great range on their own website. And the beer I'm thinking here that might work is one called Pain Salt, which is only 0.5%, but it's got loads of flavours from berries and citrus, a little bit of a sour kick. That might be the one, just a real reset beer.
And I think you then carry this theme on just to let yourself up for a bit, because it's a marathon, not a sprint. You're nearly at the end. We've done the two big ones, and soon enough work will be coming back. But
yeah, work's on the horizon again. So I'm thinking on January the 2nd, you gravitate towards another brewery who specialises in those low beers. And Sheep in Wolf's Clothing Brewery is another one to think about here. They only set up in 2021, but they've already made quite an impact on the scene. They've won this year's European Beer Challenge with their Shetland Pony Ale, and that's the one I recommend. I've had that. It's really good. It's 2.8%, so you're creeping up the ABV a little bit, but not too much. It's still low, it's still light, it's still clean. It's a great beer. That's your January the 2nd beer. Now, there's only 2 days of Christmas left officially. On the penultimate day, what are you fancying?
Well, as you say, we're sort of going through the gears a little bit now. Maybe you've had a couple of days off. You might have just had that can or that bottle from Sheep and Wolf's Clothing on one day and the day before the MASH game. That might be the only thing. But now, you're sort of thinking, oh, yeah, work's coming up soon. Ooh, like to get back into it. What do I want? Well, I think if you want to sort of get things going again, what would you do in years gone? 10 years ago, you'd think, oh, I want to have a livener. I'm going to have a lager. Or I certainly would.
Castlemaine 4X.
Lovely.
Do you remember 4X? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I liked 4X.
Back in the day, it was
I bet I don't now, but I mean, you can't get hold of it. I remember that used to be available in Safeway. Yes,
I remember 4X well, yeah. Used to have a lot of that back in the day.
The lager scene has changed a lot now, and the beer I'm thinking of is Duration's Cloudwater's collab called Good Times. You can get it on Duration's web shop, and it is, for me, the best American light lager you can get. And I even will say that, knowing what American light lagers there are, it's better than them. It's better than your Budweisers and your Millers, which I find actually a bit too sweet and a bit too watery. This is sweet enough and light enough, but it's not watery.
It's light beer full of flavour.
Oh, it's brilliant. It's such a good beer. It goes down a treat. I would buy as many of these as you feel like you might want to get through, because it's one of those, you'd rather have a 6-pack of this than you would any of the sort of big macro lagers you can get out of supermarkets. And I just think that'll get you rolling into the final day before everything has to go back to normal. So you've got to go out with a bang. So what are we going out with?
Well, New Bristol are doing loads of beers over Christmas. They've got a whole range of beers, massive stouts, all sorts. Really interesting stuff. I noticed one yesterday. There was a Christmas pudding stout they've done. All great. I'm thinking about buying a few of them. But the one I think for the final day of Christmas, the 12th day, is their salted caramel espresso martini, which is a collaboration they've done with Left Handed Giant. It's the 12th day of Christmas. Decorations are coming down. The house is going to be bare and stark. And you're sort of thinking, oh, what do the next 12 months hold? You want something that's just going to ease you in to the next period in your life, and I think this could be the beer to do it. Pour it into a lovely martini style glass, a cocktail glass. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to get this beer and I'm going to do this. Sit in front of the fire, pour it out, sip away, put you in a good mood, ready for 2023.
And just to prove that you will do it, you'll put that one up on socials.
Absolutely will.
And hopefully, if we can get some of these other beers through the period, we'll put those up as well. I mean, Dave's already got his Christmas Day beer. I'm sure he'll put that up as well on the day or the day after. And do put your beers up as well. Tag us in, show us what you're having over the festive period, because we'd love to see it. There's so much beer out there now. This is just a rough guide. Let us know what you do or what you're having, and sort of share it with us too.
Absolutely. Take some of our ideas, do your own spin on our ideas, but just let us know what you're up to over Christmas, what you're drinking, and we'll share it with our listeners. Now, our next episode is going to be out in 3 weeks' time, which takes us to December the 12th. Now, barring accidents with keyboards and computers and spillages, that sort of thing, but that's when we'll next be back. Hopefully we've got something special lined up for that next episode. We did a cheese pairing, a cheese and beer pairing last year. We're going to do something similar this time. So check out episode 38 for that. All our usual features, more interviews, more chats, and we will see you in 3 weeks' time.
Daft About Craft, the craft beer podcast.